Welcome to From the Farm. I am Jennifer Poindexter, Director of Promotion and Education Programs at Missouri Farm Bureau. Today we're joined with Steve and Teresa Meier from Horseshoe Pines Christmas Tree Farm in Jackson. Steve and Teresa, thanks so much for having us.
Great to be here. Glad you could come
coming.
to see us.
Can you tell us a little bit about the background of Horseshoe Pines Christmas Tree Farm?
Sure.
We started Horseshoe Pines Christmas Tree Farm back in 1980 when we bought our farm at that time. And we thought, you know, it would be nice if we had Christmas trees for ourselves. We had no intention of having a Christmas tree farm to sell off of. We learned a lot, and the first year was pretty much a failure. I think out of 100 seedlings planted, we had one survive. And so the next year, we were fortunate enough to get in touch with Jack Slusher with the Missouri Department of Conservation. He told us we need to join the Missouri Christmas Tree Association. We did, and that's how everything blossomed over the last 32 years. So.
32 years is a long time to be in business.
Well, that's our selling seasons. We've been in business for 40 years now.
Wow, that's a very long time.
Yes.
And it's the difference between 32 and 40 years is the growing time that it takes a Christmas tree. Is that correct?
Right, exactly. Most Christmas trees will grow about a foot a year. So you've got at least 6 to 7 years before you've got a sellable product. And it is a long-term investment.
And you have a pine cone in your hand here. Obviously, pine trees are going to come from pine cones. But can you kind of tell us a little bit about the pine cone that you have in your hand?
Yes. This is actually from a Scotch pine tree, which different pine trees have different shaped cones. But this is one that still has some seed in it. And each of these little petals, as they open, has a seed inside. So that is where a tree will start from. And in the wild, of course, that pine cone would open up in the forest. They would drop to the ground. And depending on the type of the seed as to how long it would take for it to actually sprout as a seedling. But this is where trees start from. Now our trees here come from a nursery. Just like babies are started out in a nursery after they're born, the baby tree seedlings that we get have already been growing for 2 to 3 years in the nursery, and then they come here to be planted in our ground.
So all of our pine trees that we see alongside the road or anything like that can come from a seed just like this.
Right,
Yes.
Exactly, yes. Just like this is how they all start.
And sometimes you'll see them off by themselves, and we must thank our birds for that, because the birds will actually pick part of this up and carry it with them.
Yeah.
So
Mother Nature's pretty cool.
Mother
She
Nature
is.
does a great job.
She's pretty amazing.
You have something in your hand that you refer to as a tree cookie.
Yes.
Can you kind of tell us about that?
When we have a discussion with young people, we talk about the age of a tree. And one of the easiest ways is to call on our tree stump itself, which we cut off a piece, and it's called a tree cookie. Now, if you look very, very close, and I don't know if the camera can pick this up or not, but there's rings that go in all the way to the center dot on this tree cookie. Each one of those rings stands for 1 year of growth. And that's how you can tell the age of a tree when it's been cut off.
Wow.
This one is 9 years old.
Wow. So a 9-year-old tree is approximately 9 foot, is that?
Roughly 9 foot. It depends kind of on the variety, because sometimes we have to shear our trees once a year. And some trees can grow a leader, which is the top branch, up to 3 feet long. We have to cut that down, otherwise it gets to be a tree that is not a sellable tree. It's just a tree. So we cut it down anywhere from 10 to 14 inches depending on the variety.
What makes a tree the perfect sellable tree?
Most of our customers like to have a tree somewhere in the 7.5 foot range, because most ceilings are approximately 8 foot tall. Now new houses are coming and people are wanting 14, 15 foot trees, and we're trying to accommodate that. But what we look for as a sellable tree is one that has good color, it has a straight trunk, it is filled in all the way around, it doesn't have Mother Nature's holes sometimes the way she likes to put them in, and that's where your tree farmer helps out, because he can help shape that tree and make it grow in a much better manner.
So in some areas we cull or we get rid of things. Do you ever cull trees?
Yes, we do. Not every tree is going to be a perfect Christmas tree. You're going to have some that will grow crooked. It could be that a deer came through and rubbed his antlers on one and tore the sides out of one tree. When we have things like this, those trees are left grow without being sheared for a year, and then we will harvest those, and they're made into Christmas decorations like wreaths, garland, grave blankets.
Centerpieces, yeah, all different kinds of things. We always say that God grows trees, he doesn't necessarily grow Christmas trees. And that's part of our job, is to help shape them into Christmas trees.
So most of the things on this farm are being utilized some way, shape, or the other.
Yes.
Either in
Yes.
wreaths, garlands, or actual Christmas trees.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So today we're gonna go out in the tree field and maybe even get to go see some horses and things like that you have on your farm. But what's your favorite part of being a Christmas tree farmer?
Well, I think each of us have a different thing that we like best. My best thing is when I see a multi-generation family come, and we are now where we have the third generation coming back, where mom and dad had their infant when they came the first year 30 some years ago, and now they have the grandchild with them. So that's what makes my day, when I get to see that happen.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And my favorite part is everybody comes in and says, we found the perfect tree. It's just exactly what we wanted. And I hear that over and over, and that's what warms your heart and knows that all this work that we've been doing is worth it.
And something else that we hear quite often is, thank you so much for having this, because there is no place where we get to see the country anymore. And so when they come to our farm, we tell them to take their time. It may take 30 minutes, it may take 3 hours, whatever they want to take.
Yep.
We'll always have some animals there for them to see. And sometimes if I'm collecting eggs from the hens at that time, and I have a warm egg fished out from under a hen, I put it in a child's hand, their face just lights up like all get out.
Yeah. They're pretty excited.
The Christmas tree farm is really connecting consumers and kids to agriculture in the same way that
It's not just a Christmas tree farm.
Yeah.
It is a farm. Because we do traditional farming along with it. It's just that the Christmas tree farm brings the people here so they can utilize all the other aspects that we have to offer.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we are so excited to see it and to get to show it to our viewers. We are in the Christmas tree field, and in front of us we have what looks like baby Christmas trees. Can you kind of tell us what
Sure.
this is?
This is something we just planted this past, let's see, it was April. We put these in the ground, and we ordered those from a nursery. They were called 2Os. Now a 2O seedling means that it was in a growing bed for 2 years, and then it would have gone to a transplant bed, but this one did not, since it says a 0 after it. So it could have been a 2-1 where it was in a growing bed plus 1 year in a transplant. These are the kind that we like to get. This is a white pine. It's a great tree for us because it develops into a natural Christmas tree. The ones that don't make perfect trees, we do utilize, and you cut up for greenery and use that a lot. Now, as you go through, you're going to see we plant all of ours in rows, and our rows are separated just like we're doing for COVID right now. We have to space out.
Yep.
So ours are 7 feet apart, and then the seedlings in the row are 7 feet apart. And the reason we do this is for airflow. No matter which way we go, if we have a westerly wind or a northerly wind, we're going to have airflow, so we have less disease problems.
So how much have these seedlings grown in the last 7 months that they've been here?
These seedlings, they have probably about 4 inches of growth this year, because they still had a bud set on the top, and they finished growing out from there. Next year is when you're going to see the major growth. We will have at least 12 to 14 inches of growth from there.
And I can kind of see, so where we're standing, there's green grass, but then where the seedlings are, it's brown or dead grass. Why is the grass dead there?
Well, when we get ready to plant our seedlings, approximately 3 to 4 weeks beforehand, I go through and I spray a narrow strip in the grass that will kill grass. It does not permanently kill it, it just stunts it back for a short period of time. We come back in with our tractor planter and we plant each seedling then. After the seedling is up about a month, the grass has started to come back, and we found that by keeping a low grass quality around the base of the tree, we don't have Mother Nature drawing the moisture out of the ground and drying our ground out as fast. So instead of spraying to kill to bare ground, we only stunt the grass and then we mow all year long. So
is there some truth in that we want the nutrients in the soil to go to the trees and not to the grass?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the reasons is our area is prone for fescue grass. Fescue will invade around it and the roots get so tight the tree can't grow itself. So we try to eliminate that, and you'll see that this isn't, what we're standing in is fescue. Mm-hmm. What is beside it is crabgrass. It's a natural grass that comes back, so that's why.
When you plant these, how deep are the roots in the soil with the seedlings?
Our tree planter plants roughly 18 to 22 inches, and the roots are approximately 16 inches deep. Okay. So we leave just a little bit of space so the root can keep going down.
And because the roots will keep going down as the tree grows?
Yes, okay. They sure do. And then we've started something new this year. We go through, beside each tree, we put a fertilizer spike. To give it a little bit extra nutrient. We try to do this maybe a month after the trees already set itself and the dirt is settled around it, and that way it has a boost for the root to grow.
It's giving the roots all the food it needs.
Yes.
How do you monitor the water consumption of seedlings?
There's several different ways you can do it. One of the best ways is if you can take a thermometer, just like you would take your temperature, and put it into the ground and see what the soil temperature is. When it gets to a certain level, you want to start putting moisture to the ground because it's drying out.
Mm-hmm. Do you do that with irrigation?
We do two kinds of irrigation, and all of it uses a drip line. The one is called a passive and one is called a natural, where we turn the hydrant on, the water goes out. Certain areas of our field we don't have a water hydrant that is close. Mm-hmm. So the passive irrigation is there, and we've set up water tanks on the wagons and gravity feed from there. We set it on a high spot and the gravity feeds into the lines.
Okay. So what's the next stage? We have seedlings, but what's the next stage before we get to the full grown?
I'm glad you asked that, because every year after we've planted this one, since we planted this in 2020, next year in 2021, we're going to have to start shaping this tree. It'll have a leader that is way too long. We'll have to come back and clip it to the proper length. Some of the branches will have grown out too wide, so we trim them down, and we want a conical shape. If you know your math, it's approximately a 60-degree angle that we want on the tree. And one thing that people don't realize is it takes several years to get this seedling ready to harvest. Say, for example, you started school this year as a first grader. Mm-hmm. You would be either in the 7th or the 8th grade before we would be selling this as a Christmas tree.
That's a lot of time and a lot of work that goes into a tree
yes,
before
it's
it's ready to sell.
Yes, we have to plan way ahead when we're working on this. When we come to the field in the springtime, after this growth has started, say probably May, we have to start what's calling shearing our trees. And when we say shearing a tree, we're looking at the bottom branch to the very tip of the tree, and we want to try to have as straight a line as we possibly can. And we do this either two different ways. Some people use a knife that has about a 2-foot blade on it that is very, very sharp. Other people use a machine that comes through and has a rotary blade that will trim the tree limbs down for you. And you just keep going around the tree until you get good growth. Now, the reason we do it that time of year is because our best bud set will be coming probably end of July. And if we get it sheared early, we'll get a strong bud set for next year, so we have extra good growth coming up. Now, if you look inside a tree too, this is only on pine trees now, Jennifer. But if you look closely, you'll see there's a space between this set of branches and this set of branches.
Yep.
You remember when we talked about the tree cookie, we could count the years?
Yeah.
Okay. If we look at this, We can count years of growth on a pine tree by knowing this set of branch to this set of branch. And we can say how many years that tree is.
So this set of branch, is that 1 year?
Yeah, this is one growing season.
One growing
Now,
season, okay.
as we were talking about this particular tree, instead of just having one growing season a year, this one has 3 growing seasons a year.
Okay.
So every one of these is a growing season. So it would probably take 3 of these spaces on this particular tree to count 1 year.
Okay.
But our normal pine, Scotch pine, white pine, would all be just one growing season, and you could count that way, and you can tell every tree how old it is that way.
It's very cool. Now these needles look like white pine to me, but it's not. Can you explain what kind of tree this is?
Okay, this is something Teresa and I had started working on a few years back. We were looking for something that would have a faster rotation for Christmas tree growth. 67 years is a long investment for us, and we only can utilize so much ground on our farm. So we tried to find something that would be fast growing, and we thought, you know, there's a tree that the timber industry itself uses as pulpwood, which is called loblolly pitch. It's a hybrid tree. We thought, let's experiment and see how it works. We put it in the ground. We found that it does grow quickly, but the disadvantage of this tree is instead of just shaping the tree one time a year when it's nice and hot, we get to shape it 3 times a year when it's nice and hot. So, but we get a faster growth. Instead of taking 6 to 7 years for it, we may have 3, maybe 4 years, and then we'll have a harvestable tree.
So faster time means that you guys have a faster turnaround, less resources.
Yes, our rotation period is much faster. Now, when we take the tree out too, we also do something different. Is we'll cut this as close to the ground as we possibly can. We will not plant exactly the same spot. We usually try to move over 1 foot, but wherever we take a stump that is left in the field, we'll come through January, February, and we'll put a small amount of fertilizer on that stump. It does 2 different things. It helps put nutrients into our soil, and it makes that pine stump rot away extremely fast. Within 2 years' time, this stump will not bother us whatsoever.
That's great. So we saw with the seedlings that we were all spaced out about 6 to 7 feet. Are these still spaced out that same?
Yes, they are. It's just that they have grown and they filled the space in. That's another reason that we had liked to do 7 feet. At one time we had done 6 feet and we found it was too close together. You couldn't get between our trees.
And so this is where this tree was planted on this farm, right? You're not moving the tree every year.
Where it's planted, it stays until this goes into your house and makes a Christmas tree for you.
So when someone comes to buy this, this is where it's going to be, and they can...
Yes.
Do people cut the Christmas trees right here in the field?
Yes. We will allow them to cut their tree, or we work through Farm Bureau for insurance purposes, and we like to be a little safer, so we have young men hired that will cut the tree for you too. We allow only our young men to use a chainsaw.
Right. Makes sense. So when you take these home, is there anything done to these trees to make them ready to transport back home?
We do several different things. And when we go to the barn, we can talk more about that. But once we've harvested the tree, we take it up to what we call a working shed. Inside that shed, we have what's called a shaker. It's not the kind of shaker you think, but what it does is it will put the base of the tree in a V-shaped cone, and you turn that machine on, and it vibrates the base of that tree. Well, if you look inside, there's a few brown needles.
Yeah.
Any needle that is over 2 years old will have become a brown needle, and it falls into the tree. When we shake that tree, this will fall out like that and fall to the ground, so you take a nice clean tree in your house. Once we get done with that, we have what's called a baler. Just like when you bale up a piece of some hay and put it for your stock to feed, it bunches that material tighter. Well, it bunches our limbs together like this, so that when you walk through the door of your house, it doesn't scrape your hardwood or your door frames. So,
how many varieties of Christmas trees do you guys have on this farm?
we have roughly 7 varieties that we try to raise, and we found that some work for us and some do not. The reason we try to have such a variety is each person has a different taste. Some people like the longer needle. It is, when you undecorate it, that's when you especially like these because it's not prickly. And this one is similar to the white pine. The only difference is the loblolly pitch has a much stronger branch so that it'll hold a heavy ornament. The white pine itself has a weaker branch, so you have to decorate inside or use light ornaments. Scotch pine has been a mainstay for umpteen years in the state of Missouri. We've experimented with Norway spruce, Black Hill spruce, white spruce. All of those work well, but they do need a chilling period where they need a certain period of time that they need to be in freezing weather before you want to harvest those, because otherwise it's still in a growing state until it goes through a chill.
And Missouri weather is so unpredictable that sometimes it's hard to tell if that's gonna
Especially
happen.
southeast Missouri. We never know what to expect from day to day.
You guys are welcoming guests the Friday after Thanksgiving, so here coming up, and then through just whenever you're out of trees, or how does that work?
We usually have approximately 3 week selling period, and by that time we will have sold a vast majority of the trees that we have available. All of our trees, when we go into the field, we've taken, and I don't know if you can see here, but we mark all of our trees that we want to sell each year, and we put a tag on it. The tag tells you approximately how tall the tree is and the price on that tree. When we sell a certain amount of trees, we decide that's our cutoff period because we have to have something to start with next year. So if we sell every possible tree we have,
You have nothing.
we're in trouble next year. So, the past several years, there's been a trend coming to the Christmas tree season. They're looking for something totally different. And if you look beside us, you're going to see trees that are not green.
Right.
We have red, we have pink, we have white, we have blue, and all of those we've had to come through and put what's called a special colorant on it. There's different companies throughout our industry that produce this, but it stays on the tree and it actually helps hold that needle where it's a needle stick along with it. So it preserves the tree for you, but it just adds a little bit different dimension to it. Some people, like we live close to Kentucky, so the blue is their color.
Yeah.
They want that blue tree so they can decorate their university tree farm. Then for our green trees, we go through pretty much early fall, and we put what's called a sunscreen on our trees that's going to be sold that year. And it does two different things. It does help needle retention for every tree. But the biggest thing it does is when the growing season slows down in the fall, the days are getting shorter, the chlorophyll is being drawn out of that tree because it doesn't have that long sunlight day. And it'll naturally turn a tree slightly yellow. By putting a sunscreen on, it seals that needle so that the natural green color stays with it all the way through our season.
So just like I need sunscreen to protect my skin, Christmas trees need sunscreen to help keep their color
Yes.
through the winter, so we can have
Exactly.
nice, pretty green trees.
These are our young horses that we start with. Now Chief is not old enough to work yet. He's just a year old, but he's in training. He's already learned that he can put a bit in his mouth like this, and he's learned that people can touch him any place and he will not be offensive about it. But he is a mess to work with because he hasn't learned manners yet. Now, what we try to do is put a team of like-minded horses together, and that's sometimes a problem because not their personalities are like people. Not every time do you get along with certain people, so we have to try to pick the right horse to go together. And we've got 3 different teams that we're working with now. And we try to keep a young horse like this to get ready because there's always a need in the future. Our oldest horse is 30, Bob. He's getting ready to retire because we don't want to work him much longer than that.
So how long does a Clyde's, or not a Clydesdale, because these aren't Clydesdales.
These are Belgians.
These are Belgians, right?
Uh-huh.
But how long does a Belgian or a workhorse typically live? What's their lifespan?
30 to 35 years.
Okay.
So Bob is at his maturity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how tall? Because in horses we measure height by hand, which is
Yes, we
4
do.
inches. But how tall does one of these horses get?
Our tallest one is Moses, and he's 18 hands and 1 inch.
It's pretty tall. It's about 6 feet. And that's at the shoulders,
At the shoulder.
wither right here.
You'll figure at the shoulder blade right in here.
Okay. That's a pretty good sized horse.
Yes, he is.
And so work horses we don't typically ride like we would quarter horses or something that we're going to barrel race with.
That's right.
Because they're
They're,
made for wagons?
they can be ridden. They're just not comfortable. Their gait is not proper for what you want to ride with. Now, at one time, they were used as riding horses for the knights because the knight had such heavy armor, a light horse couldn't hold him up. So they used draft horses for the knights.
He is quite inquisitive, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Pain is more the better word for it.
These horses play a vital role in your farm.
Yes, as I told you earlier, when we first started selling our trees, our tree field was a quarter mile from where our sales shop was. And it was too far to ask people to walk. Well, we decided that we had the draft horses. That was the proper way that we were going to sell our trees. We were going to give people rides with the draft horses as an incentive to come to our farm. And since that time, it's just become a mainstay, and we have to have horses now. We have people asking to ride, so.
Well, you can't not have horses at Horseshoe Pines.
That's exactly right.
What kind of care does a horse take?
A lot of care and a lot of feed. So,
A lot of attention.
Yes, you have to watch them daily. As we told you, we do have one horse that had recently got his foot hurt, so we're struggling getting him healed up, back up. But yes, we watch them daily. They're in our stable once a day so we can check them over.
Wow. How much feed does a workhorse eat in a day?
It depends. If they're not in a work situation, they're on limited feed because they mainly live on grass for us.
Right.
When they go into the work situation in the fall, then they'll get several pounds of feed a day, depending on the size of the horse.
Does age play a part into how much
A
food
good
they get?
portion of it, yes. And it depends on the type of feed we give them. So,
Okay.
and they get quality hay in the wintertime.
Well, they sure are fun, that's for sure.
Well, they became a necessity for our Christmas tree farm, so.